Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson, and I'm joined by Duncan Palamourdas because today is Philosophical Friday. Duncan, welcome back, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing great, good sir. How's life with you?
Life is good. Life is good. I can't really complain. I'm gearing up to go out to the World Series of Poker for about a week in Vegas, which should be pretty exciting. Get to hang out and formally meet some folks who have been on the podcast, including yourself
Right.
in the real world for the first time coming, out of this pandemic. So
I know.
pretty exciting.
Likewise, yeah, I think it's going to be really, really good time. I really like the World Series. Probably I'm going to be playing the side games for the most part. I mean, but we can't resist. We're probably gonna. My wife and I are going to play a couple of events. Maybe we'll see.
Can't resist. Can't
Yeah,
resist the events, huh? All right.
that's right.
Well, we'll see how you feel after you enter the first event. And
I always regret it. It's like why am I doing this again? From a business standpoint, makes no sense. It's like the hourly is so much better than the cash games, but it's the dream. It's fun. Just go and watch people. It's fun.
yeah, it's like the fifth donut, right?
Right,
It's like
right.
I really shouldn't, and then but I can't resist, and then
That's right.
you take a bite and you're like, oh my god, what did I do? What's the topic for today's philosophical breakdown?
Yeah, so today we're thinking of delving into the idea of fun versus profitability. And to just give a little bit of a background to the listener, while I was writing the book, I was always trying to explain what the book is all about in fewer and fewer words, right? And it
Need that
started
back cover blurb.
exactly. It started, with a paragraph. You know me. I start. Sometimes I remember to finish my sentences. Sometimes I don't. I end up, writing something.
That's what makes you such a great podcast host, by the way.
You think so? I think that's not my biggest weaknesses. So, oh man. Yeah, now I get the zing. Okay, so anyway, so I was writing a paragraph essentially, and then I was trying to say, well, it's about the what players can do to win money at the poker table and what they couldn't do. Then I was like, okay, maybe it's more about why money flows from amateurs to professionals in the long run. Okay, that seems shorter. But then I realized it really is, this book, a battle between fun and profitability, because the two heroes of the book, Alex versus Bobby, they battle it out with having different priorities. Alex, the professional, prioritizes profitability over having fun, whereas Bobby, the amateur, prioritizes having fun over having profitability. And that's basically what drives the entire book. And what kind of decisions do we make? So I thought maybe it would be a good idea to discuss, first of all, the difference between the two. What are the main incentives for going one way or another? Are they mutually exclusive? Questions like that.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, just off the top of my head, a lot of questions spring to mind. So yeah, let's dive into today's concept and start breaking it down.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one question we can start is, again, what are the main incentives for playing poker? We alluded to two of them, but would we say what are some incentives? What are some reasons that people are playing poker, Brad? What do you think are some?
I think social interactions
Mhm.
in live poker specifically, just getting out, being around other human beings. I think humans are social creatures, so that fills
Right,
a clear need. Um, yeah, I think the sweat, the
the sweat.
fun to make money. I think all of these things are other reasons why folks show up at the casino and plop down with a bunch of money and play cards.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. And if you think about it, typically they would fall under those two categories, right? I mean, social interaction is fun, like what having people, um, playing those home games sometimes, eating pizza, drinking beer, having fun, and not being a stickler for the rules and things like that. And then, of course, there's always the underlying incentive to make money, either consistently or just, oh, I really want to beat you in this one pot, right? I mean, like this is again, it's trying to make money, the competitive aspect of it.
Well, I guess the one thing that I would like to ask you is, you mentioned that Alex prioritized fun,
Profitability over fun.
profitability over fun.
Right.
Bobby prioritizes fun. So
Right.
Bobby's the dummy. I guess the first question is, Bobby, in this situation, right? It isn't as if they can access higher poker knowledge
Right.
in the moment, and they're choosing to say, no, I don't want to do the right thing. I want to
Right.
do the wrong thing, right?
Correct.
I don't think it's like a conscious choice, right?
Okay, so this is actually very interesting that you bring it up, and it opens up an entire stream of ideas and thoughts, right? One of the reasons why this topic resurfaced is because I watched a video recently of Warren Buffett addressing the shareholders in the annual Berkshire Hathaway meeting. And one of the things that he said, actually posted the video on Twitter if anybody wants to check it out. Basically, he said, when he was 21 years old, he went to Flamingo, and he saw so many people being so well dressed, flying thousands of miles around the country just to come and make poor mathematical decisions, as he put it, right? And then he realized in that moment, I'm going to be very, very rich. Right, which actually makes sense. So now, why am I saying this? Because again, from his perspective, it's a dumb decision. I personally take a slightly different approach, and it's the approach that we've been discussing last week, right? I mean, people assign price to the sweat. People assign a price to, being dressed, flying, 1,000 miles or whatever it is, flying, from across the country or sometimes from different countries just to go and have a little bit of a sweat for the opportunity to win, even though you know that, long term you might not.
Yeah, and it's also like a feeling, right? You get on the plane, you have that feeling of anticipation for arrival. You're planning out all the things you're going to do, what you're going to play, imagining like how it's going to feel. All of these things, I think those are all positives when you really look at them.
Correct, and I would say that this is part of the reason why I wouldn't characterize necessarily Bobby as the dummy, and I was very careful. I was very careful to to make that clear in the book. To be fair, I do think that there are Bobby wannabes and there's also Alex wannabes. Like, to me, those people who are actually trying to prioritize profit over fun, but they end up prioritizing fun over profit, these are the quote unquote dummies, if we were to use like a derogatory term. And similarly, if Alex really wants to have fun, but then tries to prioritize profitability over fun, again, she's the dummy there too, because she's not really true with herself, what it is that she wants to do. And just, if I make like one more side comment, in my classes, typically, that's the very first thing that I tell to people. I want everybody to feel at ease. If you want to gamble, you're more than welcome to do so. It's a safe environment. You can do anything you want. Of course, it's not for real money, but you can do anything you want. There's no judgment, because again, different people fall into different categories.
So really, one thing that I think we need to define is like, what is fun, right? Because fun means vastly different things to vastly different people. And to me, those two concepts are not always mutually exclusive.
Which is perfect, because it brings us to a segue to the next question. Are fun and profitability mutually exclusive, and to what extent? And to do that, we will need to give them a little bit of a definition.
Yes.
So
no.
No. Right. That's very good. End of podcast. Thank you everybody for joining us. It was a pleasure.
Good stuff. Well done. Yeah.
Do you want to take it away?
Yeah. So the fun, I mean, again, I think it's subjective, right? I don't think there's one universal definition for fun. I think for some people, fun is competing to the best of their ability, making the best possible decisions that they can make. Some people, fun is a sweat, right? It's like just making decisions that are, knowingly bad, just so that you get the extra sweat, right? You get to see it. Is this deuce straight suited gonna make a straight flush, right? Like you get to have that option too. So I think, like, fun in most cases, as far as I've found. I don't think that anybody enjoys losing. I
Hmm.
think that losing for everyone is pretty unfun. Maybe there's somebody out there that loses and they think it's just fun and a grand old time, but I have yet to meet
David
that
Goggins,
human.
maybe he's fueling his.
Yeah, so I think like masochism is a different thing that could be addressed here, where fun is actually the unfun thing.
Right.
It's like opposite day for adults.
Right.
But yeah, like I mean, I think winning typically is fun, or break even is fun. I think maybe just like not losing your pants is considered fun. Hard for somebody to get buried and leave the table and feel like they had a great time. I would imagine.
Sure, yeah, but the interesting thing is that I've seen people commonly referred to as whales losing massive amounts of money at the poker table and be far more happy when they leave the table than some truly miserable regs that's sitting at the table, and they're running
That's true.
pretty well at it. So it really, like you said, I mean, it's very, very, very subjective, and part of the reason you know when it comes to these definitions, I'm also a big proponent of that they're highly subjective, and we need to be very careful when we define them and things like that. But part of the reason why I'm using these words like fun and profitability, I think there is a certain contradictory element when we're trying to maximize profit and when we're trying to have fun. So even though profitability is itself fun, and sometimes the two coincide, I would say this is more of a happenstance than something natural. So, in other words, these two goals have their own life, and sometimes they align, they happen to align, sometimes they don't. So, in whatever definition we give. So, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that, for example, if for someone folding is not very fun, because folding means you lose an opportunity to do something great, even to a great player, then if in a certain spot folding is the right option, then at that point fun screams call, 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 or raise, 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 like stay in the hand, and then profitability says fold. So my point is, there will be spots like that. There will be spots where one goal says one thing and the other goal says another thing. These spots will be different for different people depending on how they define it, but they will always be there.
Yeah, and that's more in the micro, right?
More in the micro, exactly, and it can show up. And as a matter of fact, I think part of the reason why it like a less painful experience, and it definitely a torture less experience in poker, is to find a way so that we can make fun and profitability somehow align, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is more spiritual and goes at a different level, but perhaps finding the idea that, what, in this spot I'm folding this hand every single time. I don't care, if the flop comes, gives me the nuts or whatever. That hand is gone. I'm happy with that. I'm found peace with that decision. Something like that.
Um, Zooming out a little bit, it just
Mm-hmm.
kind of hit me that what I think is like fun is the experience of the poker session to the individual player, whether or not it's something that they would like to do again, whether or not they created a fond memory that they enjoyed, right? I think ultimately that's what drives the definition of fun. And when you mention those regs who are miserable, right? I would say that like they're not having fun.
Right.
Like they're not playing this game for fun. They are playing the game solely for money. And I would also argue that if those miserable regs um like weren't so miserable at the poker table, they would probably make more money. Is That's sort of the irony of the situation, is they
Right.
would increase their hourly rate if they were more curious and less pessimistic than they tend to be. And then zooming in, as you said, just a decision to call or fold. Like folding doesn't tend to be very fun. Even when you make a hero fold that turns out to be correct, it's like a bittersweet. You feel great that you were able to read the situation cleanly, that you folded. I folded kings like 3 or 4 times pre-flop in my poker career, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been shown aces every single
Every single
time.
time. Me too.
And one was in a poker tournament a long time ago, and they showed aces. I folded my kings. I actually folded them face up
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, I'm 21 years old and that's what 21-year-olds do. And then I realized, like, after the hand, like, well, shit, I still lost half my stack.
Yeah,
I still lost 30% of my chips in this thing, even though it feels like I won. That situation, I still lost a significant amount of my stack. So, like, even when you make a hero fold correctly, a lot of times it's still bitter because you do lose the pot, right?
absolutely.
Whereas, like, I think calling is definitely more fun. It's exploring your curiosity. It's being able to, like, see, hello, Mr. Deck. Let me unwrap this present that you've delivered to me and see what's inside, you know?
Absolutely. And it also gives you the potential, to manipulate a situation later. If you are an advantage player, you can find other spots. Whereas and again, if I forgot to go into like a small thread that can actually be a podcast topic in itself, folding feels like giving up.
Sure.
Right. And the issue about giving up is that it has a negative connotation. However, one of the lessons, poker has taught me is that giving up, a strategic giving up, is essential in life. Right. Again, like
something that life has taught me. Like,
right, life, right?
Many benefits to giving up, quitting a job, getting out of a shitty relationship.
Exactly.
Just distancing yourself from a toxic friend or family member. Like, there's a lot of utility in giving up.
Absolutely. And again, I mean, this is probably something we can do like an entire podcast on, because again, sometimes giving up is the easy way out also. So it creates a very interesting dichotomy. Just giving up is not, sometimes, I'm having this conversation with my wife. And one of the things that this is a rule for me, like I don't like to skip gym sessions. And my rationale behind it is that if I start skipping even a single session, let's say every 3 months or 4 months or whatever, then it might be a snowball effect. Maybe then, my eating habits are going to go down, or maybe, maybe I can be late to one of my sessions with my students, right? Because it's once every 3 months. And then from there, starting to give up in one thing, maybe you start giving up on your relationship, or, or you give up on yourself, like very bad things can snowball from there. So it is important. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, you can finish your.
No, I think I made my point. Yeah. So
yeah, so it's basically like, you don't want to be Fat Thor. We don't want Fat Duncan, Fat Duncan showing up for Philosophical Friday with a Twinkie, barely coherent, no sleep.
Yeah, Ragnarok was an amazing movie, by the way. Like, if you haven't watched it, I think that was hilarious. I didn't expect that. That was, anyway. Sorry.
That was in game, Duncan. Come on, get your.
I thought it was Ragnarok when he was fat. No.
No, and then it was the second Avengers Endgame where they were battling Thanos. Get it right, Duncan.
When he was fat? Okay, I thought it was Ragnarok. Anyway, so I guess Ragnarok was the one where it was just him and like cracking jokes all the time with his sister, like being the villain.
Yeah, it was Thor and Hulk and Hela. Yeah, she was the villain.
Okay,
and,
all right.
Valkyrie.
Okay.
Oh, and Jeff Goldblum.
Of course.
See what happens. We got sidetracked. I made my Fat Thor, and we fell right into the world of Marvel.
If you actually asked me to bet, I would bet some pretty good money. So I guess you saved me. So it was on Ragnarok. Yeah, they all blend in after a while. Yeah, Endgame was fun too.
All right.
Anyway,
so, what were you talking about? Where are we now?
you said you don't want us to be fat Thors, like this.
No, you specifically.
Okay, me specifically. Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with being Fat Thor.
Okay.
I aspire one day.
It's the Thor part you're being excited about, right? Like being a Nordic god, or yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And incidentally, like, do you think that there are let's start with our question first, and then we can get to the other one later. Do you think there's some limits or boundaries in having fun and profitability? Do you think that these terms, by definition, are restrictive?
What do you mean by that?
Like, for instance, one example that comes to mind is when we try and make like a profit. Let's say you play at I don't know, like the low stakes in Vegas, like 1-3 or 2-5. It's probably infeasible, for example, to expect to have like, I don't know, like $100 per hour hourly rate, like at those stakes, right? I mean, it's probably that's some boundaries that there are in profitability. Do you also think there's probably some similar boundaries when it comes to fun? Because like sitting at the poker table,
I've played in some private games in Los Angeles, and it certainly appears at those games that there's no boundary for the amount of fun you can
I
have
know what you
playing
mean.
poker.
I know I had that feeling before. I mean, I had some pretty crazy sessions. I don't know, like I always remind myself it's probably not sustainable, but that's yeah.
Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, I'm just outside of like, everybody getting rowdy and grabbing an axe and chopping down the poker table. I think that's probably too much fun. But in general, it's hard to have too much fun at a poker table. I think that we can look directly at the recent Hustler stream that we talked about last week, where
Mhm.
everybody's having a grand old time just getting the money in and again and again. It didn't look as if outside of, the one poker professional in the game, um, didn't look like many people were not having fun during that poker session, which yeah, to me, that's sort of like the gold standard of fun at a poker table, and what really um, poker players, poker pros should be trying to facilitate on a regular basis.
Absolutely, because again, another thing that um, I sort of realized by playing poker for a long time, I used to do things that I'm no longer doing. Like for example, I will go to the poker table. I try to stick to myself. Don't pretend that I'm not there. For a long time, I thought, even though I'm a very social person, in real life, I just thought it would be best. But I realized that keeping people, well, not necessarily entertainers, but keeping people entertained, and keep a joyful experience is better for the game. It's better for you. Like you described earlier, miserable people hurt their bottom line. So it helps for the environment to be nice, and it helps your bottom line as well.
For sure.
Yeah,
I mean, again, we're looking at creating experiences that people enjoy, right? That people look back fondly on. And I mean, to be fair, also creating these experiences for ourselves, right? Like
absolutely.
I want as many experiences that I can look back fondly on myself. And if I'm going
Absolutely.
to spend a lot of time at a poker table, well, then I may as well be creating fond memories that aren't rooted in whether or not it was a winning session or a losing session.
Yep, absolutely. And this actually sort of like brings us naturally to the question of, do you think that poker players, in some sense, are, and I'm assuming when I say poker players, I mean professional poker players, advantage players, winning players, however you want to put it. Do you think we are taking advantage of those who want to have fun, in some sense?
I don't know. I think it's a tough question because like does the is the gym taking advantage of people that want to get in shape because it's there and folks go to it with, a specific need or goal in mind of
Mhm.
what they're looking to experience? I don't think so personally, but maybe your opinion differs from mine.
No, that's actually a good way of putting it. There is, and that's how I like to put it. So essentially, what you're saying is that the free markets uh, determine what kind of needs are there. And one way so you gave the example of the gym or of a business. The business is there because people want to go in a certain place, whether it's a fitness business or it's a restaurant business. People are hungry and they want to have food, and the restaurant business gives them food, or they want to work out and they give them the equipment to do so. And similarly, there's a very similar need for humans to battle other humans at the field. And essentially, what professionals are doing, they're giving them action, which
Did you
it.
say buttle like a
Uh,
butler?
yeah, one thing about me, like I can't, the nuance. So if you ask me the difference between the word beach and the other one, that beach, I can't really hear the nuance. So people
Yes.
are having
So
fun of me.
so yeah, the poker players they're buttling the other players at the table. Go on.
Which I don't hear it, by the way, as you sing it. It's like, yes, that's exactly what I said. It sounds perfect. I had a friend of mine who used to make fun of me of saying the word mustache. I used to say mustache because, again, I can't hear this subtle. So I love it. So just butchering the English language since I was a
Yes.
teenager. So
Reason number 2 that you got hired for this podcast co-hosting gig.
absolutely, absolutely, unapologetically, so ruining everybody's days and lives. Okay. Yeah. So and now I lost my train of thought. What we're talking about.
Buttling the other players. That was
Right.
battling.
Right.
Yeah.
Battling. So right. So basically, there is a need. Sometimes people are saying that if there weren't recreational players, there wouldn't be any poker. I would say it's probably the other way around. If it wasn't for professionals to be there day in and day out, games wouldn't even start. That's why, like in certain casinos, they have shields. They have people who, they are at the table to just get the game started. So the professionals are usually the ones who, by being consistent, being there at the casino day in and day out, they get the games going. Of course.
And for the record, too, from the the platform or the operator standpoint, they seem to have such a negative view of the pros. However, those pros and the people that put in the most hours at your casino are your best customers. Like, they are generating the most amount of rake and the most amount of money over the long term.
Correct, exactly correct. And I think you nailed it. I nailed it in the head. Pros are customers. I know some people using the metaphor that we are the house and recreational players. No. The house is the house. We're just a customer that can bring more customers. So there's certain levels to it because we pay rake as well, and we pay a tremendous amount of rake. We pay lots of rake, right? I mean, I did some estimation, like something like north of $20,000 a year, if not more. And now rake has increased also. So the numbers, my calculations were from earlier. We pay a lot of tips. So we are not the house. Like we assume all the risk. And we don't have the long run in our disposal the same way that the house does. We're not the house, but we're not exactly, your typical customer either. We're somewhere in between. I just want to
for sure, I agree 100%.
Make that. So I guess another question there to possibly address is are there similar examples in real life? And by that, I mean, are there situations where we have some sort of a dichotomy, not necessarily mutually exclusive, but independently living on its own, trying to satisfy its independent goals that often, very often, as a matter of fact, is at odds?
I don't know. If I could have thought about it a little bit, maybe I could come up with something.
I think you mentioned something earlier, right? I mean, you mentioned something earlier which sparked something in me, and maybe that's what you probably had in mind, perhaps. But let's see. You mentioned earlier, for example, that if the regular players were not as miserable, they would be more profitable, and that kind of like reminded me of like 9 to 5. Like that immediately sparked. I don't know. Did you have something to say about this? Like maybe a similarity with like a 9 to 5.
Okay. I was going literally nowhere with that comment.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. No, it was just because, again, it like that's the first picture that came to my mind as you were describing this, because it felt like, those regulars, they're going to the cubicle essentially, even though that cubicle is a felt and it has a bunch of other people, which is basically nearby cubicles. They're very miserable. And to me, that sounds, although there's nothing wrong with a cubicle, by the way. I know people who work 9 to 5 and they're very happy with their lives. It really does depend on your situations, your goals, your environment, all of that stuff. So I'm not downplaying any of that. But another example would be like that, basically your day job, right? It can
make money, or you could be fun, but you probably don't want to have too much fun.
Exactly right. And I would say that there's like a very common, I would call it personally bad advice, which is essentially misquoting Confucius, who said, love what you do and you won't have to work a single day in your life. That's what Confucius said. But then there's people who like, follow your dream, just go. And those people who say follow your dream, probably, they haven't necessarily had serious hiccups in their lives and have trouble bringing money at the table and have a family, being starving. This type of comments come from people who've been successful or who've been lucky enough in their lives. They're people who really struggle to bring money at the table. And, sometimes there's disadvantages. Some people are handicapped and all of that stuff. So, but any thoughts about that? The battle between fun and profitability as it pertains to the struggles of the everyday life. Try to make a living on one hand, but at the same time try to satisfy an inner need to have an accomplishment, be useful to society, be happy about yourself, how you contributing.
Not really.
Okay.
I think you summed it up quite well.
Okay.
It just kind of, when you were talking about the 9 to 5, it reminded me of a little allegory about a monk who was sweeping. And I'm pretty sure I've said this on the podcast before and likely butchered the story before, but he asked his master, what do I need to do to reach enlightenment? And the master said, sweep the temple. And he sweeps the temple, and he's, what now? Well, go sweep the temple. And he swept the temple, for well over 5 years, and was sitting there in the middle of sweeping the temple, and then everything hit him all at once. He reached enlightenment, and he just felt it, and he understood exactly what his master was doing, and then he just kept sweeping the temple.
Right. Exactly.
And that's sort of like
that's right.
what it reminds me of, right? In that we're in this thing, spending a lot of energy, and it's not so much the relationship of the thing to you, it's your relationship to the thing that ultimately should be prioritized. And so look inward instead of outward, I guess.
Very, very well said. And it's also, this is it, right here, right now. It's not at some point in the future that doesn't exist and will never exist, right? It's right here, right now. Sometimes people are asking, what would you do if you knew you would die tomorrow? Well, hopefully the same things that I've been doing every day, right? Because I'm just gonna spend more time with my wife, do work, with my students. What else am I gonna do? Play video games that I like, read the books that I like, go to the gym. What else are we gonna do? If we don't enjoy the day to day, what we're doing, then we're probably doing it wrong, right? Because it's never gonna change. By the way, that was wax on, wax off for anybody who's watching us on Mr. Miyagi. This is childhood hero of mine. So that was Karate Kid, though, right? I mean, I didn't get this movie wrong, did I, Brad?
No, it's right.
Okay.
Right,
all right,
right
good,
movie.
good. Okay, it's just making sure my track record not so great when it comes to movies. So, no, you're absolutely right, and this is, by the way, a wonderful story. The idea of look on the inside, not on the outside, right? And try to essentially create your own meaning. What you can make you happy. Maybe that's another topic also for the future. Trying to find meaning in poker and things that we do in life. Let us know in the comments. Greatness Village, if you have any questions about that, and if you're interested in a topic like this.
Absolutely.
There is one more thing that I wanted to mention about the examples. There is a very interesting example in physics, of all places, of a similar, I guess we can call it dichotomy of two things which are not mutually exclusive at first glance, but fundamentally they are. And this has a technical term. It's called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. And to simplify essentially what it says that when things are very small, like when we're talking about small, we're talking about atoms or the constituents of atoms, electrons, protons, very small things, the particles very small, it is impossible to locate the position of that little thing and the velocity in which it's moving. So we cannot say where it is and how fast it's moving at the same time. So as we narrow it down its location, we have uncertainty on its technically momentum, but or how fast it's going. And as we're narrowing down how fast it's going, we have uncertainty on where it is. And it's interesting that, you know, life, even at a scientific level, even at a fundamental level, comes with these things, this sort of trade-offs that we cannot have one and the other at the same time. So I guess my point is we can't have everything. You know, sometimes we just have to make sacrifices.
Yeah,
And that's okay.
Be at peace with what you can have, and yeah, just be grateful for that. Which I think is a good way to close down today's episode of Philosophical Friday. Great stuff as always, man.
Absolutely. No, it was a lot of fun. And Brad, where can people find us? And if they have questions or ideas for new topics?
Yeah, greatnessvillage.com. There's a hashtag Philosophical Friday channel. Pop in there, tag at Coach Brad or at Duncan, and give us your suggestions and questions, and we'll do our best to get back to you.
Absolutely. And also, where can people find you on Twitter?
I don't know what my Twitter handle. I think it's at CPG Podcasts.
Professional podcasters here, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm not a professional tweeter. I'm a professional podcaster.
Podcaster, yes. And at Ask the Math DR, and also on YouTube, you can find us on Brad's YouTube channel or my YouTube channel, Chasing Poker Greatness, or Why Alex Beats Bobby at Poker, or just, you know, Google our names. That's probably easier to find either one of us.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next week.